Hey everybody, what's up? Ehren, QPC Canada. We've got a really interesting episode for you today. Justin does make it. He's in the house, so that's always fun. The Conservatives haven't seen him in a while and are ready. Poilievre's ready to tear a strip off him, and he tries to. What's interesting about today's episode is the Liberals, all of them, were firing back with more venom than I'm accustomed to seeing them do. Anyways, we'll jump right into the episode. Let's check it out.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Here we go. It's on.
The Prime Minister doubled the cost of housing and the national debt increased inflation more rapidly than over the past 40 years. Interest rates have increased at record rates. This doesn't only harm Canadians' wallets, but also harms Canadian unity. We've just seen the first budget for an independent Quebec. They justify their budget by saying that the Prime Minister is plunging this country in debt. There's a Prime Minister realize that he's not worth the cost, the financial cost and the divisive cost.
It's good.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I'd like to answer to my colleague very shortly, but I would like to express my deepest condolences following the death of 5 Canadians, including 3 children in Sault Ste. Marie this morning.
Tragedy that occurred after intimate partner violence escalated into a shooting rampage at 2 homes. I want to extend my deepest condolences to the grieving families, friends, and loved ones of the victims. Know that you are not alone.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Trying to soften up
Mr.
the
Speaker,
opposition.
we also offer our deepest condolences to all those who have been affected by this tragedy. The Parti Québécois mentioned that they want to reach independence for economic reasons. That is something the party would not have dared during Conservative years because taxes were low, debt was low, taxes were low, inflation was low, and growth was strong. And that is the reason for which this Prime Minister should bring back old politics. This has led to divisiveness in Quebec. Will he recognise that his policies are not worth the cost financially or with regards to the division of this country?
We'll see. I bet you today he'll be demanding
Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker,
he looks confident.
the official parties are bringing us back to the old days of provincial squabbles, but we will concretely help Canadians with investments in housing, with help for childcare. We will invest in our seniors. We will invest in our workers. We continue to be here to help people so that they can go grocery shop. With better competitivity, we'll continue to anchor ourselves in delivering benefits and opportunities for Canadians while other parties are talking about mere squabbles. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Because of the excellent low inflation, low tax, low debt record of the Conservatives, the Separatists were a dead cause not so long ago, but his inflationary policies have brought them back. Prime Minister said it was just inflation when food prices went up, but then there was shrinkflation, smaller sized servings for higher prices, and now we have skimpflation, where food processors, in order to pay the carbon tax, actually strip out the nutritional value of the food. How much health and nutrition will Canadians have to lose before this Prime Minister reverses his plan to quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite likes to play word games. I suggest he's conflating all the issues together to try and scare Canadians. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, while he's reaching for new boogeymen to try and make Canadians fearful and angry, we are delivering supports for Canadians with historic announcements on housing across the country. Municipalities are stepping up to respond to the needs of Canadians on moving forward and with greater competition to bring down or to stabilize grocery prices, to continue to be there for seniors, for young people. We know cuts the Conservative leader are proposing are not the answer. We're going to continue to be there for people.
He's here to argue today, guys. That's fun always. He's
The
a
Honourable
dork.
Leader of the
but
Opposition.
They're living with
fun to
liberal
watch him
cuts
argue.
every day. They have to cut how many meals they eat. They have to cut the portions that they eat. And now they're cutting the nutrition out of that food because after 8 years, his carbon tax and his inflationary policies are clearly not worth the cost or the corruption. Yesterday, the Prime Minister's toadies and the NDP and Liberal committee blocked the RCMP commissioner from testifying about the Prime Minister blocking a criminal investigation into his S&C scandal. Now, the ArriveCan app is under criminal investigation after wasting $50 million. Will the Prime Minister agree to personally cooperate with this criminal investigation into his Arrive Scam app?
They're going at it today, guys. It's been a while since Trudeau's been on the floor, so they're going to take advantage of that, I'm guessing.
Mr. Speaker, when the
And Greg
opposition
Fergus.
is bringing up matters that were settled 4 years ago, we see at which point they are trying anything they can to try and distract from the fact that they have no plan, they have no approach. They are proposing just cuts, and more cuts for Canadians, while we step up with things like dental care for kids, support child care spaces across the country, invest in supports for families and better homes as we accelerate the rental home initiative. These are things that the Conservative Party campaigned against. They continue to propose cuts and fights while we deliver for Canadians.
I don't have children, but I've heard you have to be pretty impoverished
The
to
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
qualify for the,
Amplified disinformation
children's
on the
dental program.
subject last week. He went into hiding and refused to answer questions and then sent out his public safety minister to offer a midnight answer. So the Prime Minister needs to speak about himself. Does he believe that the State of Israel fired a rocket or missile at the Al-Ali hospital in Gaza? Yes or no?
Pretty straightforward question. Going to be hard to dodge that one. Not for the rodeo clown.
Le très honorable chef de l'opposition. Le très honorable Premier ministre.
Monsieur le Président, when it comes to issues that have such a serious impact on Canadians and on people around the world, we need to make sure we're grounded in facts. That's why I asked our defense experts and our military specialists to analyze open source and classified data to come to a conclusion. And the conclusion is that according to the best evidence that they have, Israel did not fire a rocket at that hospital.
Smoke a little look at the end. Check it out. All the Conservatives are applauding him for taking the stand. That's interesting. That is interesting. They stood to applaud the
Honourable Member
Prime
for
Minister taking the
Bailey-Chambly.
stand.
Mr. Speaker, my friend Paul in Quebec will be happy to hear that their budget has brought back Quebec independence as a debate here in the federal parliament through the voice of the leader of the official opposition. The Prime Minister has gone against America and America's intelligence opinions when it comes to the hospital in Gaza. He has not spoken about the information we have as a country. How will he persuade the United States to join our call for a consensus for a truce in Gaza and Palestine?
I don't know if we can dictate whether there's going to be a
Right
truce
Honourable
or a
Prime Minister.
ceasefire there.
Quite the contrary, Mr. Speaker. I spoke to President Biden last weekend, and we continue to do everything necessary as allies to ensure that humanitarian assistance can cross into Gaza through humanitarian corridors. We will continue to strive for this, for humanitarian truces that will allow aid to reach innocent civilians that need help. We need to see hostages released. We need to protect the lives of innocents. Canada is fully involved, included with sending humanitarian aid. The Honourable Member for Bailey-Chambly. Has the President of the United States talked to our Prime Minister about the importance of having a consensus in his own party so that Canada and Quebec can speak with one single voice internationally? Speaking of consensus, he told me last week that he would accept meeting other opposition parties in order to communicate better and in order to establish a parliamentary single voice. I've had no news about this, so should I perhaps free my day tomorrow? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are very busy with our work that people expect us to do, but yes, we will set some time aside so we can talk among party leaders to talk about this extremely difficult situation and also to talk about the ways we can help to unite Canadians. Many people are hurting, many people are angry, many people are feeling various emotions, legitimate emotions and comprehensible emotions, but our role as politicians, as leaders, is to unite Canadians, unite everyone, so that we can reach a consensus, and that's what we will work towards.
Old Justin's going to unite everybody.
Now see, the Bank of Canada interest rates are hurting Canadians. Canadians like John Coughlin, a 76-year-old man who had to sell his home because his mortgage payments went from $1,000 a month to $2,600 a month. And now he's not sure he can find a place that he can afford to rent that's in his budget. Tax incentives to private developers alone will not solve this crisis. So when will the Prime Minister get serious about building homes that people can actually afford?
Affordable housing is a real issue. There is no affordable housing anymore.
Mr. Speaker, I was pleased to be in the member opposite's hometown of Brampton just the other day to actually deliver great news for Bramptonians in line with the great news we've been announcing across the country. 24,000 new homes over the coming years in Brampton because of the housing accelerator that we put on the table. That's $4 billion that councils across the country are talking about and passing motions and debating because of the federal initiative that is putting more homes on lots, that is creating and construction opportunities across the country. We look forward to continue to step up with municipal partners right across the country.
Here, bravo.
So confident. It's ridiculous.
Député de Burnaby-Sud.
Malheureusement,
Unfortunately,
Come on, Jagmeet, put him in his
we
place.
already knew that tents can be set up faster than houses. And we can see it just across the river in Gatineau. But what is the Prime Minister doing this very evening? He's organising a fundraiser at $1,500 a head in that very same city, Gatineau. It would be hard to be more out of touch than this. Is the Prime Minister still planning to go have a chat with rich developers and ask them ever so kindly to build affordable housing? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are very happy to have signed a new agreement on housing with the province of Quebec. The Minister for Housing will have more details to share on this agreement, this unprecedented agreement. We will always work in collaboration with the government of Quebec in order to put forward a plan that works for Quebecers and that will allow that more housing be built more rapidly. That is our priority, of course, Mr. Speaker, and that is the reason for which we are working not only in Quebec, but from coast to coast to coast with our Housing Accelerator Fund. We are delivering for Canadians, and we will continue to deliver for Canadians by working hand in hand with Quebec and other provinces.
Then I have Député de Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, when NDP MPs are not
All
busy
right,
covering
listen,
up for the Prime
that
Minister's
rents me
scandal,
is a
they're busy
firecracker.
defending
Jeez.
anti-Semites.
Stick
Just
it to-
yesterday, the NDP member from Hamilton Centre wrote a letter in support of an anti-Semitic MPP that even the Ontario NDP had to expel. Does the leader of the NDP support his member's letter, and does he support the position of this Ontario MPP?
Look at that stare, man. Yeah. There's old Greg Fergus interrupting everything again. He's out of control, guys. He's a power control freak.
I remind colleagues that a member of an opposition party can't answer the question. The question period. So as a result, unless there's a member of the government that wants to reply, we're going to move on to the next question.
They're not going to want to reply to that. So.
The honourable member from Calgary, Forest
On to
Lawn.
the next.
8 years of Liberal NDP incompetence, doubling the national debt, resulting in the most rapid mortgage interest rate hikes in Canadian history, putting Canadians most at risk in the G7 for a mortgage default crisis. Around 70,000 mortgages are renewing every month with a minimum of at least a doubling in interest rate. Expensive photo ops don't help either, like a $4 billion housing photo op that built a whopping 0 homes. I mean, the member from Vancouver Granville probably flipped more homes than that. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Will he stop his inflationary deficits and balance the budget so Canadians don't lose their homes?
Says Raj is one of the best speakers they have in the Conservative Party, I think. What do you guys think?
Mr.
She's
Speaker,
very
it's been
well spoken.
fascinating to watch the Conservatives make misguided criticisms about the Housing Accelerator Fund because they fear that it's actually going to create more homes for Canadians. They are rooting against home building in this country for their political interests rather than supporting policies that will put a roof over their neighbors' heads. Mr. Speaker, where the Conservatives promise to cut funding for housing, we will continue to make the investments necessary. It is the right thing to do. It is the only way to approach the housing crisis, and Canadians will find relief from the measures that we are putting forward on this side of the House.
Doesn't have his normal rhythm yet.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Housing Accelerator Fund closed on August 18th. No money left, no bright ideas coming from the Liberal government. But after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, seniors in my riding are losing their homes and joining the ranks of the homeless. Everything is being driven up in cost by their inflationary spending. Bloomberg reports over half of Canadians are saying they're worse off this past year. And with winter coming and the carbon tax piling up, people know that this Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. So will they stop their inflationary spending so Canadians can have a roof over their heads?
Get some lights going, guys.
Mr. Speaker, it's hard to know where to start with the various pieces of misinformation baked into my colleague's question. With respect, she suggested that that seniors need to have more homes, but her housing plan literally includes zero mention of seniors. Whoa. She suggested that the Housing Accelerator Fund has no money left in it. I would invite her to tune into an announcement that we will be making in Kelowna tomorrow, Mr. Speaker. We are going to continue to make the investments necessary by reducing the cost of building, investing in the ability of communities to build homes. Where we will make investments, the Conservatives will make cuts. They are simply not worth the risk.
He's a dancing clown, guys.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And announcements do not build homes, and this government has built less homes than in 1972. However, in my riding, I have people that are both working that are not able to have any heat in their house for the last 2 months because of the price that this government continues to drive up with their inflationary spending. The Liberals are so out of touch, they're pouring the money on the inflationary fire and causing misery. Will the Prime Minister rein in his inflationary spending, or is the truth that this government and this Prime Minister is just not worth the cost?
She got it all in there.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, no.
Just last week, that member from Sarnia-Lambton repeated some myths about EVs here in this House, where she said that they routinely catch on fire and don't work in the winter. Mr. Speaker, I think it's important that we actually stay grounded in the facts, what this government is doing and will continue to do. That includes lifting 2.7 million Canadians out of poverty, which is 650,000 children. It means putting a price on pollution and making sure that we're there for Canadians as the climate crisis persists, and we're there and we have their backs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Clean Gould is a boring clown. She's boring.
The Honourable Member for Charleville-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, an Angus Reid report tells us that half of Canadians are worse off financially than they were a year ago, and that they expect things to get even worse this year. That is the reality after 8 years of this government. Worse still, Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' allies, the Bloc Québécois, are putting on the pressure to radically increase the tax on gas and food. It's getting real expensive to vote Bloc Québécois, Mr. Speaker. Will the Liberals show an iota of compassion and commit not to raise the carbon tax, as requested by the Bloc Québécois?
It is unfortunate he never speaks, or very infrequently speaks English, because he's very
Parliamentary
sharp.
Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And once again,
Justin Trudeau.
There is not a federal carbon pricing in Quebec. That is false, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are preoccupied by the cost of living and by climate change and by the catastrophic impact of natural disasters on our health and on our economy. That is the reason for which we have created a pollution pricing system that meets these concerns. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is it just me, or does it bother anybody else when they're reading from the scripts? I don't like when they read from
What we know,
the
Mr.
scripts.
Speaker, is that after 8 years of this Prime Minister, people are scared of finding themselves on the street twice. Not once, but twice. The Bloc Québécois voted against a motion that asked that the carbon taxes be cancelled. The federal carbon tax that has led to huge increases on gas prices for Quebecers. Can the Prime Minister commit, like his member for Avalon did, to cancel the carbon tax, which only increases costs for all Canadians and Quebecers?
Pierre Poilievre is on fire today. Like, it is too bad that he
the Honourable Parliamentary
very
Secretary.
rarely speaks English.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And incredibly so, I have to repeat myself.
Adam's pretty
there is
good
no
himself. He was doing
carbon
jumping jacks the other
pricing
day.
federally in Quebec. Conservatives campaigned on a program that included a standard on clean fuel, almost identical to that proposed by our government, but now, all of a sudden, they're against it. This attitude is not only hypocritical, it shows us that we cannot trust them when it comes to them respecting their claims for climate action. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Terrebonne. Mr. Speaker, there must be a limit to the federal government's inflexibility. 250,000 businesses could go bankrupt as early as 2024 if the federal government does not postpone repayment of the emergency account loans. 250,000 bankruptcies and countless job losses. There's not another government in the world that would have gone along with that. That is the reason for which all the premiers of Quebec and other provinces demanded on Friday that the repayment of the emergency account be postponed for a year, with no loss of subsidies, of course. Will this government finally offer flexibility to our businesses? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we offer extra flexibility for SMEs so that they can reimburse their loan. This includes a 1-year extension, more flexibility when it comes to refinancing, help to accessing new loans. This is an approach that is balanced and fiscally responsible. The Bloc Québécois voted against this. We are always ready to work with the Bloc Québécois because our main objective is to help small companies all around the country. The Honourable Member for Terrebonne. Mr. Speaker, absolutely no one is satisfied with that answer. All the premiers of Quebec and the provinces and territories are demanding a 1-year postponement. All parties in the Quebec National Assembly are demanding a 1-year postponement. The Federation of Independent Businesses is demanding a 1-year postponement. The Bloc Québécois wrote to the Minister for Finance today to demand a 1-year postponement. It's unanimous, Mr. Speaker. Everyone understands that we cannot afford a wave of bankruptcies and job losses in the current economic context. It is glaringly obvious. So when will this government finally understand?
They are going hard today. A lot of this is getting lost because they're speaking French, but
the Honourable
they are
Minister.
going hard. They're throwing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. And as she knows full well, Quebec's economy is 99% SMEs. We know that the global crisis is difficult to live through, and that is exactly why we've implemented extra flexible extensions for this emergency loan. But, Mr. Speaker, we were here, we will be here, and we will be here for SMEs. Last Friday, I was in Bromont to offer financing to a company that will create new jobs, help them for growth, because in Quebec, Economic Development Canada helps many businesses with 1,300 projects over the past year. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Mr. Speaker, in amongst the 250,000 SMEs threatened with closure are the farms of our country. They are already on the brink with high interest rates, the price of fuel, climate change ravaging crops, and so on. If the federal government adds to their woes with this emergency account affair, it will push them into bankruptcy. The government must defer repayment of the emergency account loans by a year. That is the kind of flexibility our farmers and producers need. Will the government finally do what everyone is asking it to do?
Farmers need help. This is true.
Then I have
The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to inform my colleague and remind him that during COVID, our government was here to help people and businesses. $9 out of $10 in assistance programs that came from the federal government. Now we've offered some clarifications. We offered a first extension. We've clarified the situation so that our businesses can make the right decision for the future. We are here to support with Economic Development Canada and our other regional development agencies. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of incompetent government in the management of Canada's real estate, more and more Quebecers who are struggling to make ends meet now have to live in their cars for lack of money and an affordable rent. That is a consequence of a Liberal government that is mismanaging our finances. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois support for the Liberals to radically increase the carbon tax will exacerbate the financial difficulties of Canadians. It's expensive to vote for the Bloc. Why is the government always taxing Canadians more and more and more?
Then I have
The Honourable
I expect him to be more wound up next time. He burns up like that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remind my colleague that inflation has gone down once again here in Canada. But if he wants to talk about taxes, if he wants to talk about fiscal measures, twice, not once, but twice, our federal government reduced taxes for the middle class. Twice again, Mr. Speaker. Not once, Mr. Speaker, but twice. The Conservatives voted against tax reductions, Mr. Speaker. That is incoherent on their part. Conservatives are not worth the risk, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Well, Mr. Speaker, Quebec is the provinces most affected by inflation in Canada for the 4th month in a row, and the Bloc still supports a radical increase in the Liberal government's second carbon tax. It's expensive to vote for the Bloc Québécois, especially when you end up living in your car. Mr. Speaker, after 8 long years of Liberal mismanagement backed by the NDP and now by the Bloc Québécois, Quebecers want a chance to choose a new Prime Minister. When will we bring back common sense to this country?
Then I have
the Honourable Minister. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Canadians know that the Conservative Party is a global expert in the art of having double speak, Mr. Speaker. In 2012, the current leader of the Conservatives
She's very well spoken as well.
tried to eviscerate the Act on Waterways by claiming that this wouldn't harm the environment. We know exactly what's happening with greenhouse gas and its effect on the environment. So, Mr. Speaker, we have no lessons to learn from a party that is the expert in double speak, Mr. Speaker.
It seems like Mardi Gras in here today.
Then I have Deputy
All
to
French
hold them in Norfolk.
Tuesdays.
After 8 years of this Liberal government, Canadians have lost hope of owning a home and having enough money to raise their families and pay their bills. Hope has given way to worry and despair. A new Angus Reid survey reveals that almost 80% of Canadians are worried about rising mortgage interest rates.
Wow.
This Prime Minister is just not worth the cost.
That's right.
When will this NDP Liberal government end their inflationary spending so that Canadians can fix the housing market?
It doesn't feel like the housing market even started to improve.
Mr. Speaker, it seems the Conservatives understand the cost of everything but the value of nothing. We continue to make the investments necessary to build homes for Canadians, which they decry as inflationary spending. They oppose spending on affordable housing. They oppose investments that are going to change the way that cities build homes. When we cut taxes to make it cheaper to build homes for Canadians, they propose to put them back on. Mr. Speaker, Canadians have two very clear choices: to make the investments necessary to address the housing crisis, or to cut. I know where I stand, Mr. Speaker. They are not worth the risk. We will make the investments necessary.
They're fighting back, but it's not worth the risk, like to counteract the not worth the cost.
Honourable member from Mission Matsqui, Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. After 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, small businesses are struggling to survive. Increased payroll taxes, a punishing carbon tax, red tape, and labour shortages are crushing them. It's no wonder that Restaurants Canada reports 1/3 of restaurants are operating at a loss. Wow. Will this government stop their attack on restaurants, rein in inflationary spending, and end the punishing tax hikes so restaurants can keep their doors open?
Restaurants took a whooping the last few years.
Mr. Speaker, speaking about entrepreneurs, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for joining me in attending events for programs our government has funded, which Conservative colleagues have voted against. He was able to see the real-life, tangible examples of success stories. Our government believes in empowering young entrepreneurs and has committed nearly $60 million to Futurepreneur, who provides loans, mentorship, and education to Canadian entrepreneurs aged 18 to 39. Now that my honourable colleague has witnessed the benefits of our investment, perhaps he and the Conservatives can stop voting against supports for young entrepreneurs, which will take Canada backwards.
Tia Tequila getting fired up too. Liberals are fighting back today. You don't see that very often. They usually just say partisan this, partisan that.
Order.
We're investing in Canadians.
Order, please.
Député de Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the Winnipeg Salvation Army announced 60 urgent shelter beds to meet the needs of refugee claimants. Winnipeg Centre is where most refugees and refugee claimants first settle in Manitoba, and there is a severe shortage of rent-geared-to-income homes to house refugees and their families. While the Liberals failed to act, newcomers in my community are sleeping in shelters or on the streets. Will the Liberals make major investments in deeply affordable housing so that everyone has a roof over their head?
L'honorable ministre du Logement.
The Honourable Minister for Housing.
We have debates in this chamber around housing policy. It's really important, and I thank the honourable member for her focus on continuing to support some of society's most vulnerable. We work with different populations who are struggling, including vulnerable newcomers, including women fleeing domestic violence, including other people who simply cannot find a place to stay. We have doubled the funding for homelessness support through the Reaching Home program, and we will continue to make the investments necessary to protect some of the country's most vulnerable people as we approach the winter months. It's important we take care of our most vulnerable, and I appreciate the NDP's support in this regard.
You don't see a lot of that either when they're actually acknowledging the coalition. You don't see a lot of that.
In Nunavut, one bottle
Go,
of
Lori,
orange
come on.
juice is $24.
Sure.
One can of chicken soup is $10.
Direct.
Nutrition North is subsidizing corporate greed. It is not lowering grocery prices. Last weekend, the NDP leader and I heard from Nunavut. They said they can barely make ends meet. Meanwhile, the Northwest Company continues to report sky-high profits. When will the Liberals introduce an excess profit tax and reform Nutrition North so it can help people, not CEOs?
I like the sound of that. Excess profit tax.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank the member for that very important question. Nutrition North is an important program. That's why we announced $163 million of new money for Nutrition North in the last year. Of that, significant amount of money will go to the Harvester Support Grant, which encourages people in the North and Indigenous nations to do traditional harvesting, hunting, and food sharing. This year alone, the grant supported 15,000 harvesters, 410 hunts and harvests, and over 717 food sharing initiatives.
Well done. The Honourable Deputy House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is already well on its way to becoming a global leader in the production of electric vehicles and EV battery manufacturing. Unfortunately, the Conservative Party has its eyes closed to this. Just last week, the Conservative member from Sarnia-Lambton repeated the absurd myth in this House that EVs routinely catch on fire and don't work in the winter. Meanwhile, in Eastern Ontario, we recently saw one of North America's largest investments in EV battery manufacturing. Could the minister please tell us why the government sees these these investments to be so important for Canada.
You guys notice that the Liberals are coming with a little bit more fire today? They're casting stones or throwing rocks at the Conservatives today? They don't usually do that. They usually just dance around. Andrew Scheer is up to something. Do you see that right there? Andrew Scheer is up to something. Used to be the Speaker of the House. So he knows a lot of the rules, and now Greg wants nothing to do with it, shutting things down.
Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for a great question, Mr. Speaker, and his leadership. Mr. Speaker is actually right. I am very pleased to report to this House that your McCor from Belgium, Mr. Speaker, chose Canada to have their plant in North America, Mr. Speaker. Your plan is going to create 600 jobs in Loyalist Township just near to Kingston, but also, Mr. Speaker, it's going to produce enough battery materials for 800,000 electric vehicles here, Mr. Speaker. There will be a piece of Kingston and Loyalist in every car in North America, Mr. Speaker. We are building the car of the future, something that the do-nothing opposition would never be able to do.
The do-nothing opposition, like I said, that they're aggressive today. I think FCP is going to be, FPC, pardon me, is going to be the next leader of the Liberal Party. Who do you guys think would be next in line? Because after the next election, if Trudeau loses, he's going to have to resign.
After 8 years of this Prime Minister, when there's now cover-ups about his cover-ups, it's clear that he's not worth the cost. Yesterday, the NDP Liberal government sent their members to shut down a testimony from the RCMP Commissioner about the investigation into the Prime Minister's SNC Lavalin scandal. This is the same investigation that he blocked the release of documents to when they were investigating whether or not he obstructed justice. My question is to the chair of the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics. On what date will the Commissioner of the RCMP appear at the committee?
He's always very direct and has a little edge to his questions.
L'honorable président du comité, le député de Barrie-Innisfil.
Speaker, I can't begin to tell you my profound disappointment in the fact that the NDP Liberal coalition chose to shut down and adjourn the meeting before it happened. I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, that proper notice was given. In fact, I emailed the vice chairs of the committee as well as other committee members 72 hours before the meeting occurred. Now, I took advantage in my position as chair to invite the RCMP, given the latest information that had been released. Public Safety Minister suggested that if we had any questions to the RCMP, that we pose it to them. I took that opportunity. I can't tell the member when the next opportunity will be, but I hope it's soon, Mr. Speaker.
Just avoiding the meeting. They're all wound up today, both sides.
Alors?
Order.
Alors?
L'honorable député de Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Well, I hope they were paying attention, Mr. Speaker. That's the first time we've had a question actually answered in this House in 8 years.
Whoa!
The Prime Minister and the Public Safety Minister both said that the RCMP Commissioner was the one to answer questions, and he was sitting at the table yesterday, and they adjourned the meeting as part of their ongoing cover-up. They blocked it just like the Prime Minister blocking the release of those documents into the criminal investigation that was concerning him. After 8 years of this Prime Minister and his detrimental effect on our democratic institutions, it's clear he's not worth the cost. To the leader of the NDP, is protecting the Prime Minister from criminal investigations part of their coalition deal?
That's a good burn. That's a good burn. I don't find that the NDP or Jagmeet catch enough heat for their involvement in this coalition government. Do you notice that it's always just the Liberals getting blamed? And
before in a previous question,
the NDP could as easily break that up.
Leaders are not invited to do that. Only members of the government, parliamentary secretaries, or chairs of committees. If there's a minister who would like to answer this question, I recognize the honourable minister.
Are you guys getting bored of Greg,
As the member
Speaker of the House?
knows, committees are in charge of their own business and they make those decisions themselves. But if he wants to talk about democratic institutions and criminal investigations, I will remind him that it was a member of the governing Conservatives that was arrested for violating election laws and actually went to jail. So he should be careful as he's casting stones in glass houses. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Casting stones. That's the most interesting I've ever seen her. Her delivery was poor, but what she said, there was a lot to.
Colleagues, I would appreciate if you give your attention to the next speaker who is being recognized by the speaker, the member from Calgary-Mindeport.
Damning new information revealed today shows that ArriveCan contractors submitted receipts to the government for a company that doesn't even exist. Wow. This investigation already includes allegations of identity theft, forged resumes, contractual theft, fraudulent billing, price fixing, and collusion in the creation of the $54 million ArriveCan app. How much worse can this boondoggle get? Simple question, which Liberal insiders got rich?
Oh my.
Who got rich?
Ooh, that's hot. You don't see them point across the floor very often. Yeah, look, Greg just trying to shut it all down. It's typical.
The Honourable
What about
Minister.
that scam?
Mr.
did get
Speaker, as colleagues know very well, we expect public servants at all times to follow the appropriate Treasury Board contracting practices. My colleague will know in this case the Border Services Agency, as part of their internal audit, uncovered information that they then subsequently referred to the appropriate police authorities. And Mr. Speaker, that's exactly what has to happen in these cases, and we should let the RCMP do whatever work they think is appropriate in this concerning circumstance.
Absolutely.
L'honorable député de Mégantic-l'Érable.
The NDP and the Liberals want to protect their Prime Minister at any cost. Yesterday, they prevented testimony from the RCMP Commissioner, preventing testimony on the SNC-Lavalin affair. I was deeply disappointed to see the Bloc Québécois vote in favor of protecting the RCMP. The RCMP was investigating obstruction of justice and problems with SNC-Lavalin. Corruption is expensive, and when the Bloc decides to help cover up the truth, it's expensive. Why is the Prime Minister so afraid of the RCMP to the point that it needed the Bloc to hide its involvement with SNC-Lavalin? The Honourable Government House Speaker.
That was a good one by Luke, and now they're bringing back the boring clown to put everybody to sleep.
My honourable colleague knows full well, committees make their own decisions. That has always been the case, and I hope my colleague will acknowledge that that is how it works.
L'honorable député de Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte.
Quebecers are proud of their aerospace industry, and Bombardier in particular.
Okay. The man with
years,
4 names.
Bombardier has
2
developed
hyphens.
extraordinary expertise, making Joseph Armand's company a key international player in aircraft construction.
He goes off, though. He's hot.
But when the time
I bet he
came for
flips all
Ottawa
the
to
time.
renew its Aurora Maritime Patrol aircraft without a call for tender, they turned to the Americans, rejecting Quebec's expertise out of hand. Why didn't Ottawa issue a call for tender to renew its Aurora fleet?
That's a really good question. That's big business.
The Honourable Minister.
Check out the ring he was wearing. He speaks again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my colleague for allowing me to talk about the importance of aeronautics. In Quebec, we are very proud.
Captain Picard.
We've invested significantly not only in businesses, but in employees of the middle class to make sure that they can continue to pay the bills for their families, but also contribute to technological and economic development in Quebec and elsewhere throughout the country.
L'honorable député de Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte.
Président, soyons sérieux. Les acteurs.
Let's get serious. Major players in aeronautics are on the Hill today. Specifically, the director of the International Civil Aviation Observatory, machinists, Unifor, and the former commander of the Royal Canadian Air Force. They have all the answers to any questions the government might have. They have all the information to show that when it comes to aeronautics, they have the know-how, and they are competitive. They have confidence in themselves and they are right. All they're asking for is a fair process. Will Ottawa finally reconsider its position and issue a call for tender?
Again, excellent question, and it's very well dressed. Did you see that tie that he was wearing?
The Honourable Minister.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et merci à nouveau.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to our colleagues who give us the opportunity to talk about how important it is to invest not only in aeronautics in Quebec, but throughout the whole country. We know that Bombardier is an exceptional and important partner in the aeronautics sector throughout the country, including General Dynamics here in Ottawa. They make a significant difference in technological capacity, and they support the technological needs of our army.
Mr. Speaker,
yes,
silence
Larry
and
Brock,
shutdown.
right? Kingpin.
This is what this NDP Liberal cover-up coalition did yesterday when the RCMP commissioner was shamefully denied any opportunity to give evidence in relation to the Prime Minister's criminal investigation. Nowhere in the coalition agreement does it say that the NDP needs to be complicit in this Prime Minister's political scandals. After 8 years of this government, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Simple question. What is this coalition covering up?
Well. What are they covering up, guys? We only had one question. What's the cover?
Mr. Speaker, the RCMP have been very clear in this matter. There is no criminal investigation. They have closed the case. That is the independent decision taken by Canada's National Police Force, and the Commissioner, in his public comments yesterday, said he was very comfortable with that decision.
I don't know. That doesn't sound too much like enough to me. Why is there no investigation?
After 8 years, farm families know
John
that this
Barlow's
Prime Minister is not
it.
worth the cost. A financial health report confirmed that higher Liberal inflation, taxes and interest rates are taking a serious toll on Canadian producers. Their net farm incomes are down 8%, but expenses are up 21%, the highest jump in 50 years. Well, since the last tax and spend Trudeau government. All parties in this House support a Conservative bill to remove the carbon tax from on-farm fuels. But the Liberals are trying to kill that bill in the Senate. Will the Prime Minister respect the will of this House and axe his farm-killing carbon tax?
Not a lot of bills get axed in the House, just saying. The Senate really
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate my honourable colleague's concern. But the fact is, if we do not deal with the environment, we cannot do anything about the prices, any prices in agriculture. Quite simply, we got an opposition party that does not feel the climate change is an issue. We on this side, and this government, feel climate change is an issue, and we will continue to fight climate change because the disasters that have happened right across the country add to the cost of food from one end of the country to the other. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You must be getting
The number one concern for Canadian farm families are Liberal regulations and carbon taxes. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business surveyed their members, and they asked for their top 3 priorities. Number 1, reduce the regulatory and red tape burden. Number 2, reduce the overall tax burden. Number 3, 66% said their number 1 priority is to pass a Conservative bill to remove the carbon tax from on-farm fuels. After 8 years of this Prime Minister disrespecting this House and ignoring farmers, he's not worth the cost. Why is the Prime Minister working so hard to bankrupt farmers and disrespect this House? Why will he not axe his carbon tax?
Imagine the impact in your life if you were a farmer with the carbon
Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And indeed, I live in a rural riding as well. I meet with farmers, and some farmers even as recently as this morning. But Mr. Speaker, the hypocrisy from the Conservative side is just getting a little bit difficult to stomach. It's ironic and in fact disappointing to see members like the member from Bellechasse-Lechemin-Lévis and the member from Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge, who used to be Liberal provincial ministers and parliamentary secretaries in charge of carbon pricing, Mr. Speaker. They all ran on a carbon price. They all said they were going to fight climate change, but none of them are willing to stand up and say climate change in this House. And it's probably because the Conservative leader has decided climate change doesn't exist. He's too risky, he's reckless, and he's not worth the cost.
Holy cow, that's a lot to say, Adam. Whoa. The Liberals are going off today. It'll be really interesting tomorrow because the Conservatives are going to come back swinging. It would seem like Greg's been trying to stop this chaos from happening and trying to control it. But now both sides.
Calgary Skyview.
Both sides are
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
getting at it.
The drive to net zero is creating economic prosperity for Canadians right now. In every region of the country, from critical mineral mines to renewable energy projects to hydrogen production facilities. If we provide the right supports and bring workers to the table now, these opportunities will only increase. Yesterday, to the dismay of workers across the country, the Conservative Party voted against the Canadian Sustainable Jobs Act. Can the minister tell us more about why this bill is important?
Look at Greg. You can see that he's trying to hit his button.
Speaker, I want to thank my friend and Alberta colleague, the MP for Calgary Skyview, for his strong advocacy. Workers are at the heart of Canada's
Randy's
prosperity.
a funny guy.
And the
He's not a
Canadian
very
Sustainable
smart
Jobs Act will ensure that together we can grow the economy and create good, middle-class, sustainable jobs in Alberta and across the country. While we engage workers through this legislation, the Conservatives are doing everything they can to stop workers from being at the table. Their votes against this important bill for workers, Mr. Speaker, is simply more proof that the Conservative leader and his party are simply not worth the risk. That's right.
Come on, Greg. Like, this is just, it interrupts a broadcast. Like,
Donahab, Deputy de Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years, the Liberals continue to choose ideology over economic reality. The carbon tax continues to punish Canadians who need to eat. Food banks across the country are seeing record visits, including from the middle class and those with full-time jobs. A quarter of our population is going hungry or can't afford basic necessities. The Liberal NDPs just don't understand basic math. If it costs more to grow food, it will cost more to buy food. This Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. So when will this government stop punishing farmers and axe the carbon tax?
Han's got to be up soon.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to press pause on
Genocide,
the rhetoric
peace,
here
love, and
and
harmony,
focus on
folks.
what's important, and that's Canadian families. On this side of the House, we worry about Canadian families, and we are here for Canadian families, helping them balance their budgets, particularly in tough economic times. How do we do this? We've reached 3.5 million Canadian families and over 6 million children with the Canada Child Benefit, let alone building a national daycare program, Mr. Speaker. We're here for Canadian families.
Oh, man. She's a funny one, man. She's an emo clown.
After 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, Nova Scotians are having to choose between heating and eating. A senior on a fixed income in my community told me last year at the beginning of winter it cost $850 to fill his home heating tank. This year, with the new Nova Scotia carbon tax put on by this government, it cost him an astounding $1,800. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost. It's time to keep the heat on and take the taxes off. So when will this government, these Liberals, axe the carbon tax so Nova Scotians can afford to heat their homes?
I can't do $1,800 for oil gas. I just can't, like...
Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague knows very well that the program he's referring to puts a price on pollution and puts more money in the pockets of Canadian families. He's now proposing to take it away so he can make pollution free again. But on the issue of affordability for seniors, Mr. Speaker, I agree that seniors need help. That's why we raised the old age security for people over 75. That's why we restored the age of eligibility from 67 to 65. That's why we increased the guaranteed income supplement for low-income single seniors by $947. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that those measures have in common is that Conservatives opposed every one of them.
Honorable Député de Coast Bay Central, Notre-Dame.
Mr. Speaker, for seniors like Oswald Hatter of Stoneville, after 8 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost.
Clifford Small.
Oswald recently filled his oil tank for the first time since this Liberal NDP coalition imposed carbon tax on Atlantic Canadian heating fuel. He was shocked to see $119 in carbon tax on enough fuel to heat his home for just 1 month. Will this Prime Minister stop? Will this Prime Minister leave Atlantic Canadians, let them be warm, and stop persecuting and bring them out of the cold? Yeah.
He kind of forgot what he was doing, but 160 bucks. Is that what he said? 160 bucks carbon tax on one tank of oil. Christ on a bike, guys. I'm in trouble. I live by myself. Heat this house.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the opportunity to once again refer to the consumers distributing catalog of greenie products that the other side of the House would have brought up if they had been allowed the opportunity and their support for a carbon tax in their last platform, Mr. Speaker. Who knows what they would have put in this catalog, what conservative staples, unicycles, porterhouse steaks, Chateaubriand gift certificates for the Savoy Hotel. We don't know, Mr. Speaker. But we do know that now, today, we make sure they get cold, hard cash in their pockets. 8 out of 10 Canadian families do better. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I don't believe it, but like what he said. But he was being very funny for a moment. Porterhouse steaks and unicycles.
Mr. Speaker, the relationship between Canada and Ukraine is a sacred one. Canada was the first Western nation to recognize Ukraine's independence in 1991. Since Russia's further invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Canada has been a global leader in supporting Ukraine. And today, we're continuing to build that relationship here in this House as we debate the modernized Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. Could the Minister of Export Promotion, International Trade and Economic Development share with Canadians the importance of this agreement to Canada and to Ukraine?
What are we doing for Ukraine, guys?
Speaker, I want to thank the member from Etobicoke Centre for his steadfast and unwavering support for a free and democratic Ukraine. The modernized Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement will mark a new era in the Canada-Ukraine economic relationship. It's fundamental for Canadian businesses and exporters to participate in Ukraine's economic reconstruction when they win the war and recover from Russia's illegal and unjustified invasion. Canada has stood with Ukraine from its first days as a nation, and we will continue to be there with whatever it takes for as long as it takes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Doesn't sound like a good plan.
The
I don't
Honourable
see
Member
many
for
Ukrainians
Rosemont.
around here suffering. I see a lot of fellow Canadians having a tough time.
Mr. Speaker, 360 workers of the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation are on strike. With the rising cost of living, they're demanding fair wages. In the past, Liberals, like the Conservatives, have trampled on workers' rights.
Greg's got to interrupt again.
Interrupt the member.
Again, Greg.
But we are adjusting the sound here in the House of Commons. I will ask the member to restart once I have assurance that the technical issues are resolved.
Well, I'm not sure how long it's going to take for this to be resolved. Probably not too long. I think that there's no real problem. I think Greg Fergus is just trying to annoy the opposition parties. But he's getting it going again. You can see him up there. He's got a little button where he can control the floor and the audio.
Mr. Speaker, 360 workers of the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation are on strike. With the rising cost of living, they're demanding fair wages. In the past, Liberals, like Conservatives, trampled on workers' rights by imposing special legislation. The NDP is clear. These workers have the right to fight for better working conditions. Can the Prime Minister assure us today, now, that he will not trample their rights by imposing special legislation? The Honourable Minister.
He's a freak up there, guys. He's a freak.
Monsieur le Président, let me assure this House
He's not even going to try French. He was going to.
We believe strongly in collective bargaining. We believe that the best deals are reached at the collective bargaining table. We are working with both sides right now to bring an end to this as quickly as possible. We believe that the hard work must be done by the employer and by the union, and those deals that are made at the table are the most resilient and longest lasting. Thank you very much.
Did you see that when he stumbled? He was going to try to speak in French and then he couldn't.
Mr. Speaker, over 165,000 Canadians suffer
Today's
from
a fun day.
brain injuries every year. Brain injury patients are often shoved into expensive private care or left to fend for themselves. Decades of Liberal and Conservative governments have failed to support the more than 1.5 million Canadians currently suffering the consequences. Canadians deserve to be supported when they go through a health crisis. So, will the minister back my plan to create a comprehensive national strategy on brain injuries to promote awareness, prevention, and treatment?
Hear, hear.
Ministre de la Santé.
The Honourable Minister for Health.
Mr. Speaker, and anytime
Greg is
somebody
the Speaker of
sustains
the
a brain
House,
injury,
the House Speaker
it has a
on the chair.
devastating impact upon their life and the life of their families. And the member is absolutely right. We have to do everything we can. That's why we're making critical investments across the health system. $200 billion, Mr. Speaker, of additional money being put in. And those dollars are to ensure, yes, that we can see better health outcomes, but also that we can have better prevention, better care. We saw a fantastic announcement in British Columbia. There's more to come in the rest of the country. Health transformation is happening, Mr. Speaker.
Time provided for oral questions has finished.
All right, guys.
A point of order.
So that's that. That was a fun episode. The Liberals seem to be shooting venom today. Seem really fired up. I bet you tomorrow the Conservatives are going to come in hot. I bet. It'll be fun. Thank you all for watching, tuning in. I'm going to cut up this video now, put in a couple of editing tricks, whatever, and release it again around 11 o'clock if anybody's interested. So thank you very much for watching, taking part in Question Period Canada. I'm Ehren. It's always fun. I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Catch you later. Have a good one.